Right, just letting everyone in to start off with. Right, should be everyone now, but I'm going to keep admitting people as I'm starting. So I'll kick it off now anyway. Thanks everyone for joining. For those who don't know, I'm Jack. I'm a sales director for HR Magazine and part of the Next Gen board. As part of these sessions, we run them every week or every couple of weeks. And now joining me today is Rob Yates. The topic of today's discussion is effective communication. I'll pass over to Rob shortly, who will go into a presentation, similar format to what we've been doing previously. And then we'll do a Q&A session at the end. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Rob. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Jack. Morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. I'm going to talk today about effective communication. I hope that I'm going to be effective in my communication this morning and that you'll be enjoying what we're talking about. It's
which one? Sorry.
Oh, it's an interesting topic,
Which
and
one?
I would assume a lot of you are probably from the sales side of the.
Go on.
You're on mute, Rob.
There we go. Well, that was a great start in effective communication, wasn't it? Well done. Good morning to you all. Thanks for joining. I'm honoured to have been given this opportunity to talk to you about effective communication. It's an interesting topic, and I hope that you'll have some takeaways from today, and certainly please send through questions that we'll look at and we'll talk about at the end. If you could all mute where you can, please. Just getting a bit of feedback. Thank you. Yeah, great to see you all here. Very interested to see we have a young sales trainee called Mark Allen joining us this morning. It's good to see you, Mark.
Nice to see you, Rob. Looking forward to learning a lot.
Well, let's see. I hope we have something that you can take away from this, and the same for everybody else. So
certainly have.
Let me just share my slides. So I hope, excuse me, I hope you can all see that. So we're talking today about effective communication, and the agenda is, as I'm sure you can all see, but we're going to talk about what is effective communication. We're going to explore why we should care about it. We're going to look at the benefits of effective communication, how to communicate effectively, and hopefully how you can improve. And I'm sure you're all brilliant communicators, but I'm sure we can look at some of the strategies to help you improve your skills. And then at the end of this, we'll have a discussion and Q&A. I think we've got half an hour or so. Whether we'll fill that time totally, we'll see. But look forward to some intriguing questions at the end. Try and put me through my paces. So the definition, and there are plenty of them that I found when I was scratching around on the internet, but the one I've kind of felt was the best is effective communication is the process of exchanging information clearly and understandably, fostering mutual understanding and collaboration in both personal and professional contexts. So today we're really focusing on that professional side, but if you have some takeaways from today that perhaps you can use at home or in your personal relationships, well, that's all well and good. Why should we care? Well, wasted time obviously, affects productivity, and I don't know if any of you were reading this morning. Productivity has been downgraded across the country, and that could end up with a 20 billion hole in the finances for the UK. So productivity is extremely important and very important from a business perspective. So if we're not communicating effectively, we are affecting our productivity, and that's something we can do something about. It's a drain on your emotions. It reduces your effectiveness because someone hasn't communicated with you effectively, or because you haven't communicated with them effectively, and that's led to some conflict, and you're mad at them or they're mad at you. That inhibits the opportunities around communication, and affects, increases the time that effectively you have to work to get back to that working relationship again. I mentioned conflict. We should care because trust is important, especially in what we do or what we all do every day. If there's a loss of trust because you've not been able to communicate effectively with a client or a key opinion leader or whoever you're working with, and those people lose trust in you, that's going to inhibit your opportunity to sell to them, to work with them, and to effectively move forward and move the business forward. It creates misunderstanding at professional and personal level. This can lead to mistakes. If we're not understanding exactly what the client wants and we're not delivering that to them, then that can lead to mistakes. And mistakes then also pull through into reputational damage. We might be working with one particular marketeer, something doesn't go quite right because of a lack of communication, or a lack of communication within the business. They get the impression that us as a business are not doing a great job, and they communicate that through their organization to others. So it can be damaging to our business. It's very important that we should do our best to improve this. What are the benefits? Well, the flip side of some of the bits that I've really just mentioned. Building trust and respect is hugely important, from the first time that you talk to a client to all the way through developing your relationship with that person. In my experience, the longer you are working with someone, the more they trust and respect you, the more likely you are to elicit what they're really looking for as a business, and then to sell effectively to those people. It's very useful for conflict resolution, perhaps more internally, I would say, or as well externally. So things do go wrong with clients, things do go wrong internally. If we are communicating effectively, we can minimize that opportunity so that does not arise as often as possible. It's important for team cohesion and improved productivity. Talked earlier about why productivity matters so much to us as a business. So if we're making sure that we're working clearly with our teams, everybody knows what their job is, what their role is, how they're contributing to the benefits of the organization, that is a huge benefit to us and to us as individuals, but to us as a business. Enduring connections, touched on that earlier. Again, in my experience, we really only become effective salespeople when we get to know the clients well, we get to know what their key aims are, and sometimes that you won't get that from a client unless they trust and respect and work with you and you've been effectively communicating with them. It's emotionally rewarding. We all feel great when we've had a great conversation with no issues, and we get a great idea of what people are looking for, and we deliver those to them. They get the benefit, and then they come back and work with us even more, and leads to meaningful working relationships that maximize that opportunity, which I've already really touched upon. So how do we communicate effectively? There's a number of things here, but and when I sat thinking about this and really drilling down into it, one of the main things for me is considering your audience. You need to consider there, especially if you're working internationally, and I know probably some of you are working with a number of international clients. You really got to think about those demographics. Think about what that person is looking for, what they're going through in their working day. What are they really looking from you? What can you deliver to them that perhaps no one else can? And how can you make sure that you effectively communicate with them? So just have a little think about their age. If you want to engage with me, I'm more likely to pick up the telephone than I would answer a WhatsApp, or if I'm contacted through LinkedIn. That's because I'm old, but I know younger generations have a different way of communicating, and I grew up without mobile phones and social media, and look, I'm still alive. It's great. You can survive without those things. So just have a little think about who are you trying to contact, what are their interests, and how you might manage to hook them in. Have a consideration around past experience and information. What information does this business have about that person, especially when you're contacting them cold? What do we know about them? What have they booked in the past? What are the things that they're clearly interested in as a business? And then tailor what you're going to deliver to them around that kind of knowledge. And what do they respond well to? Again, I've just mentioned, there are a plethora of ways to get through to people these days. I'm sure, like many of you these days, I personally find email used to be a great way of eliciting a response from someone. I'm afraid it doesn't work so well these days. I'm not great at WhatsApp, but I have tried that and it does work. But again, being the age I am, I'm more likely to pick up the phone and call that person. But, work out what they respond well to and keep using it. Take the time to consider what your key messages are and how to project them. There's a number of ways, and it's very difficult in this format. If I was sitting in front of all of you, I'm sure I'd be more enigmatic than I am right now. But, have a think about how you're going to project what you want to say to them. And where possible, be minimalist. We're all guilty of, we have lots of wonderful stats and graphs and things to show people about how great our journals are and how great our websites are. But really have a think about what are the key parts of that messaging that you need to drive home to that person. So try and be minimalist. When I write an email and I'm trying to a sales email, I really engage with it, make sure that actually I haven't got that many words on the page. I tend to put 3 very short bullet points with the key messaging that I want to get through to that client. That seems to work for me. Other things don't, but a long email when these people are so busy is very, very difficult. And when you actually do get hold of them and talk to them, it's really important that you've thought about how you can deliver that messaging, whether it's through slides and a Teams call, or whether you're going to meet them face to face, and really think about what you're going to say. Just be minimalist where you can be. Avoid jargon, abbreviations, and slang. We all like to seem like we know our industry so well. I know what a DPS is. You all know what a DPS is, but sometimes the clients don't always know that. So it's really important to strike that out of your communication with them. Make sure that they have understood. And humility, I put that in there. I mean, I think humility supports excellent communication. We shouldn't all think that we're brilliant communicators. I know most of us here are salespeople. We think we're brilliant. We are brilliant, but let's not assume that the person who's receiving the information assumes that. So have some humility. Think about how you can do things better. When you've had an interaction with a client, critique it in your head. Did you do that correctly? Was there anything else you could have done better? That's really important. Be humble in your approach. A lot of people would say it's not what you say, it's how you say it. I think it's both. Really important. Yes, we might be communicating some excellent, very effectively, but if you're sitting there with a deadpan voice and you're not using gestures and non-verbal cues, people can become switched off and they're not going to listen to you. So it's really important to think about, use smiling, engage with eye contact if you're stood in front of a client or you're sat in a meeting with them. Do your best to make sure that they're engaged with you. And a really important thing for me, and I would admit it took me a long time, to actually learn this myself, engage in active listening. Now, there could be a whole topic on its own to a degree, but active listening is so important. So you've imparted some information, you think you've delivered that effectively to the recipient, but it's really important then to give them an opportunity to talk to you and ask them, what did you think about that point? Do I need to elaborate on something for you? Ask them, gain a real understanding of what their understanding is to make sure that they have received those key points that you wanted to get across to them. Really important. And I was probably a bit naive early on in my career where I would project my information, expect them to buy from me immediately. And fairly often that didn't happen. So again, over time, I've learned to do that. It's the old adage, salespeople and others should have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and it's very important when we're trying to work with clients and others. Just a few things here about how you can improve your skills. So practice active listening. You don't just have to do it with clients, do it with colleagues, ask some feedback, see what, perhaps prepare a little pitch for them, pitch it to them, and then ask them what they received and get their feedback as to understand exactly how that worked. Could you have done it better? And perhaps look at areas that were missed where they didn't pick up on the information that you wanted them to receive. Verbalize your engagement with everyone. Do it at work and home. I'm probably still guilty of telling Mrs. Yates what I think she needs to hear, but not actually actively listening to her when she responds, and therefore getting it wrong on more than one occasion. So don't just do it at work, do it at home, engage with everybody around you. You can improve and you can make yourself better at effective communication. I mentioned it earlier, when listening to someone, summarize their discussion points back to them as well. So quite often they will give you some of those nuggets that you will really need to effectively sell and communicate with them. So make sure that you're not thinking about the next thing that you want to say to them. Actually make sure you listen to what they're saying to you, summarize their points and speak them back to them. And that just makes sure that you've got that two-way dialogue and you're both thinking along the same lines. Develop strategies to give yourself time to think before you speak. So again, rather than just jumping in when they say something that is useful to you, give them the opportunity to say a little bit more, and then go back on those discussion points and really finally nail home what you want to say to them. Don't be scared to seek that feedback that I mentioned earlier. That was definitely something early in my career was a problem for me. And ultimately just be open-minded. We can all improve on our skills, and we have to accept that is something that it can be difficult at times to admit you're wrong, but sometimes it's a big opportunity for us as individuals. So that's a whistle stop tour through. It's sometimes easier when you get questions, but we're taking questions at the end. I hope that's given you something to have a little think about, to go off and do. We want as a business to see greater productivity. We want our interactions with our clients and our colleagues to be more effective. And if they are, the business will improve and we will improve as individuals. So Jack, we're over to Q&A.
Thanks for that, Rob. Made quite a few notes on that, especially my role in sales. Communication for me can be the make or break when it comes to setting up a deal. I think everyone will agree with that. I think especially as large of an organisation as we are, we collaborate a lot of the time, and communication I think is key. When we're working with different departments as well, and I thought I'd best mention that. Before we go into Q&A, and yeah, there's a lot of key topics. I think there's a lot to take from that. Thanks for that, Rob. I think I'll kickstart. I'll be selfish and kickstart the Q&A if you don't mind, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
So would you ask for feedback on communication from clients, or would you as well as internal?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot easier to do that in a face-to-face meeting.
Yeah.
Very difficult to ask a client, I've sent you an email, what's your feedback? If they've not fed back already. Yeah, so I think it's far easier to do that when you're in a one-to-one situation or you're in a meeting with them. But I don't think there's any harm, especially if you've got a good relationship with that client. If you've had a Teams call or something similar, then perhaps you should follow up. It wouldn't be a problem with that person to follow up and just say, look, we had a great meeting. I just wanted to get your feedback on if you felt there's anything that I could have done better. And that doesn't just mean with the clients. I think you can do that internally with your colleagues as well, Jack.
Yeah, I was going to say, so you could almost ask that question internally as well, after a Teams call, if you're presenting internally, different ideas.
Be brave enough to do that. I know sometimes it's not that easy, but that is one surefire way you can check on how your skills are developing.
Understood. I'm going to reach out to the audience then, if you don't mind. If anyone's got any questions.
Mr. Allen's got his hand up.
Mr. Allen's got a question.
Oh, you're on mute, Mark. You've done my trick.
That's why we want, communication. That's
Yeah.
what it's all about.
Okay. No, I thought that was excellent, Rob. I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot from that. I suppose, and what you said about being minimalist, don't over talk. I think keep it simple, straightforward, not using jargon. All that is really important. We all forget it from time to time, I think, but that's very important. That mess. The question I was going to ask you: what do you think about icebreakers? Because I know that sometimes when I'm a trained salesperson, but when I have sold in the past, sometimes you go into a meeting and you're faced with a stony faced person who doesn't really want to be there with you at that particular moment. And then you start talking about his favourite rugby team or football team or his wife's birthday, and suddenly the doors open and you become best mates. So how do you, on the other hand, if you overuse that, it can be seen as being ingratiating and boring almost. So how do you regard breaking into that kind of cycle with someone who may be a little bit hostile when you first meet them?
Yeah. Thanks, Mark. It's an interesting question. Just giving myself time to think while I'm talking to you. No, I mean, firstly, I think you're quite right. We've all met those stony-faced people, and it can be quite difficult and quite daunting when you go into that meeting. I think, irrespective of the personal side of things, I think the most important thing to establish very early on in the discussion is that you, as an individual, have done some homework on their business. So whether you found it on a Google trail or whatever, it's quite important to have a look, see what you can find out about the business, and establish in that very first conversation that you care about their business, you've thought about what they need or what they do. And if with big companies, there's always something going on. You'll get something from Google, the big 3Ms or Solventum as they are now, or again, you guys are dealing with huge businesses, but I think that's most important. And then once you've established that connection and they realize that you've taken some time, you're not just there to go, look, this journal's great, buy it. You talk to them a little about their business and the problems that perhaps they're facing. Then I think those personal touches can come in. But if you haven't established that at the beginning, especially with a stony faced, I'm not buying anything from you person, that's very difficult. You could ask about the family and they haven't got any, or definitely don't go near religion or politics if you can. But I think establishing that you have taken the time to understand their business and you bring something to the table, and doing that within that first interaction is vitally important.
Yeah, very good.
Anyone else had any further questions at all? Feel free to chuck them in the chat. I think you've covered it. I think that's covered communication then, Rob, in that case.
It's not the lightest of topics. I know it's difficult to have made it any, it wasn't particularly fun, but look, I do appreciate you all joining. I do hope that oh, Caroline's got a question.
In case you wanted to.
Hi, sorry, I wanted to just say, when you were talking about feedback, what I find really helpful when I'm speaking to clients is that when you do ask for them feedback in regards to even the first point of call, actually you can find out very well what's working for them within the market and what isn't working. And when you're repeatedly asking those questions to those clients, not all the time, but obviously if the conversation sort of leads that way, you can lead it slightly. Then you see a clear picture of what's happening, what's working within the industry, what's changed within the industry, because it's a repetitive thing from numerous clients that you're speaking with. So I think it's really valuable just to ask, just even if it's just a short question in regards to what's worked for them in the past, what they're doing maybe going into the future, so that you can sort of understand clearly what's happening within your particular industry, and then from that you'll be able to deliver a better package for them and proposal for them going forward. And also you can adapt slightly how you work within the business to make sure that you're sort of covering all exits. I found that the more that I've had those sort of open conversations with people, one, you're building up the trust between both of you because you're having a really nice, valuable conversation both ways, and you come away from that understanding what we can adapt slightly within our company to make those adjustments for what's happening within the full picture of the industries that we might be working in. And I think it's really useful. So that's what I want to sort of enhance what you said, really. And obviously you always talk with a smile because they can feel it down the other end of the phone regardless.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And thanks for that, Caroline. I think, given we are semi-experts or experts in our own individual industries, it can be really important to impart some of that insight. And perhaps that's the other thing about that icebreaker is, trying to take something into that conversation that the client might not know an awful lot about. But if we've spoken to our editorial teams, we know what's going on within our industry, then we can use that as the icebreaker, as Mark said, to actually establish the fact that we understand their business and we have some answers, and also that they're not alone. Other clients have had a similar problem and have tried this and it's worked for them. So really important to do that properly and effectively.
You had a question? See your hand. No worries. I mean, in case you didn't want to ask, feel free to chuck it in the chat as well. Or you can take yourself on mute.
Yeah, can I just hop in and ask a quick question? Rob, thanks for that presentation. On one of your final slides there, you had a point about developing strategies to give yourself time to think before responding. I just wondered if you had any particular tips for this, or if any other members of the in the meeting had something in particular that worked well for them.
Yeah, I mean, for me, my strategy has always really been to just try and give myself, try not to jump in, because quite often they'll give you that nugget that you think, right, I can really sell against that, but they're in the middle of a conversation, and it's better to try and just let them continue, and then you can circle back to that. The other thing that I tend to do is, Mark asked me a question earlier. I was thinking about the answer, so I kind of repeated it back to him in a shorter version, if you like, just to give me that extra second to have a little think about what am I going to say, how am I going to conduct the sentence. So they work for me, but I mean, there's a number of different, we're all different, so we will perhaps use different cues, but and we're all here, perhaps some of the others here have got other strategies, but I think when we're trying to project this information like I am this morning, your head's buzzing and you're really going for it. Perhaps taking a few deep breaths, making sure that you're calm. I mean, that's another thing that was taught very early on. When you're going up in the lift to a face-to-face meeting, check your breathing, slow your heart rate down, prepare properly so that you don't sort of dive in and blast at whoever you're meeting. I think that's quite important. But throw it to the floor. If there's anyone that's got any other strategies, we'd love to know them. Probably unfair to do in a group this large, but thought I'd try.
Thank you, Rob. Cheers.
Thanks, Jack. Thank you.
I believe that's coming to the end of our time, but thanks very much. Thank you again to Rob. Thank you to everyone for their questions as well. Thank you very much for joining. I've much enjoyed this format of the Q&A. Normally it's in the Q&A box, but actually I quite like this version. So long may it continue into their next sessions as well.
It's effective, Jack. It's communication.
It's effective.
Yeah.
There is a question, Jack, in the Q&A.
Yeah. Oh, is there?
If it's from Chris Jones, I refuse to answer.
Thanks, Rob.
Okay. Apologies. Yeah. Thank you for that, Chris. Actually, again, that's communication right there. Yeah. We've got. If you want to take this, Rob, is any tips on communicating negative news / information?
Always a difficult one, isn't it, for us professionally and at home. I think it's about being direct, and actually, where possible. I mean, again, something I always try in my professional career, and probably not so good in my personal career or home stuff, is have a little think about how that person might receive that information. The best way to deliver that information to them, but be direct about it. I think it's worse when people try and hide from it, and actually just, you know, be upfront about what those issues are and have a little think about those solutions. You know, again, I find it, I do my best if I'm projecting a problem to my CEO or to others, to have had a thought about what the solutions to that problem or some of the solutions to that problem might be. And I think if you pay the respect to that person of doing so, then that might sweeten the pill a little, Chris. But I guess it's down to personal preference.
Tim raised a really good point as well, commented on it in case anyone didn't see it, and said, Tim Willoughby said, plan what you need to say in advance, use direct and simple language, and do not try to sugarcoat the message. I guess that falls into that being direct in that communication. But again, some really good points raised. If anyone did have any further questions, like we've done in the previous sessions, feel free to drop them to us directly, or I'm sure Rob's open to people contacting Rob directly as well. Furthermore, but I've really enjoyed this session. It's been some great questions, and thanks again for everyone joining. Have a great rest of the day. Thanks everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Well done, Rob. Excellent.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Bye.